Hey everyone, welcome to SOFcast. This is your host, Matt Parrish, and we've got a really fun episode for you today. We've got Sergeant Major Chuck Ritter and Major Bobby Tuttle, fellow Green Berets from our schoolhouse out at the Special Warfare Center and School at Fort Bragg. We got a chance to talk about partner force operations, some of the transition from global war on terrorism into some of the partner force stuff Special Forces is doing right now. We talked a little bit about professional military education, how they're looking to revamp some of those things to make it more useful. And then we had some fun conversations about officer and enlisted sort of dynamics, both on a team and for both of them as the co-host of SWC's official podcast, Pineland Underground. Another cool thing that I want you to check out is after we finish this conversation here on SOFcast, we flipped it and I was a guest on Pineland Underground. So once you finish this episode, go check out their channel, subscribe while you're over there to Pineland Underground, and then check out my guest appearance on their show. And so with that, hope you enjoy this conversation with Sergeant Major Ritter and Major Tuttle. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. How you doing today?
Hell yeah. Thanks a lot, Matt. Really appreciate having us on the show, bud.
Hey, we're sharing a mic because obviously SWC, we don't have the money. And SOCOM has all your cool stuff. You know, as Green Berets, we're dirty deed done dirt cheap, so this is what we got.
That trickle-down effect, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah,
hey, man, I'm excited to have the president and vice president of Pineland on with that background. You guys are looking real solid. I'm excited. I feel like I'm back in Robin Sage, and I've elevated such a high position that I'm outside of the G-base, and I'm actually in the political sphere of Pineland. So, all right, gents, let's say we got a couple of listeners who haven't heard your show, haven't heard of you guys, as we're all quiet professionals, and, Chuck's a damn war hero, but a lot of folks haven't heard his name, haven't read some of the background. So get our listeners caught up. Let's go to Chuck first. Chuck, give me the quick kind of background. Where'd you come from? What group? How'd you matriculate up to now being a sergeant major, deputy commandant there at SWC?
All right. So started in the infantry once upon a time, decided to try selection from Hawaii. Made it, went to 3rd Special Forces Group, and I was there for the majority of my career. I managed somehow to stay in the same company from a young E6 to being a company sergeant major. I did one tour at SWC, which is the Special Warfare Center and School, over at the NCO Academy as the first sergeant for the senior leader course. Went back over to 3rd Special Forces Group and Charlie Company 3rd Battalion, and now I'm the deputy commandant of the NCO Academy for Army Special Operations, which basically means if you're an NCO in Army Special Operations, which for us is Civil Affairs, Psychological Operations, and Special Forces, you start at our basic leader course and you got to come back to our doors if you want to promote. So our job is to educate, but the backstory, 12 combat deployments, a couple other deployments in there, a lot of fun times, but 24 years in, now I get to do the podcast and work at the NCO Academy for my last year and some change in the Army. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah. And provide NCO supervision to Pineland Underground for the officer that's assigned to it.
And then, my whole goal in life is I'm like, hey, I can't make E10. I'm going to try my hardest to get this major fired every episode. I haven't been successful yet.
Yeah, swing and a miss, bro.
I'm working on it.
That's awesome, man. All right, Major Tuttle, coming from out in 1st Group, I believe, correct? Tell us, kind of give us a background.
Yeah, so coming from 1st Special Forces Group, but had a unique experience. So I'm actually a 2nd generation Green Beret.
Nice.
I pride myself on that a little bit.
Awesome.
I was born in Germany during the Cold War, and then my dad spent some time in the Berlin Detachment, or PSSEB, the Physical Security Support Element Berlin. So he's got long hair and wearing a turtleneck and all my baby pictures as a kid, right? Which is kind of cool.
That's awesome.
And to these days, I get to hear the stories of my dad running, gold bars through safe houses all over Germany, and my mom's a Volvo. So, really introduced to SF at an early age. Saw my dad as a Green Beret, really as a GI Joe, and really set to kind of emulate that for somebody I utmost respect for, and kind of that mentor in my life. So I commissioned out of Texas A&M, out of the Corps Cadets. Pretty proud of that. Also, 2nd generation out of there, Corps Cadets. So gig 'em, whoop. And then I commissioned as a chemical officer, or chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. And I was devastated coming out of. I no joke. I'll tell that story later if you want to hear it, but I cried when we assessed our branches.
Yeah.
But dates. So through a series of coincidental events, some good mentorship, right place, right time. Had the opportunity to go to Ranger School, and then graduated as a chemo out of Ranger School, and was assigned to 1st Special Forces Group, working out of 2nd Battalion as the chemo.
Yeah.
And I got to go to the Philippines, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So I got that trifecta as a young officer, but just spending time around the guys out at 1st Group and seeing what SF and RSOF was all about. I was like, that's what I want to do too. I wanted to go to 10th Group and speak Russian. I got Okinawa and Tagalog, so it worked out perfect. But I did my team time out in Okinawa, Japan, on a dive team, which was absolutely incredible. In the water regularly out there, and then went down to JRTC, spent some time imparting knowledge and doctrine on our folks at the Special Operations Training Detachment. Yeah. I kind of see that as the Lost Boys of USASOC, but loved my time there. And then back to 1st Group, Naval Postgraduate School, and then a nice stint here at SWCC and a command opportunity, working some good initiatives and being around all the guys that come back to instruct. And, really it's been fantastic because I roam the hallways and run into folks that I've seen downrange. And again, just awesome place to be. And then over here on Pineland Underground, getting to talk to some real authentic topics that are important to SWCC, important to RSOF, important to our, really the regiment, but also, project that message out and kind of learn from these guys around me. So it's awesome. Thanks, Matt.
The Naval Postgraduate School is how long for you?
I was just listening to this episode.
Yeah, so we go back on that. Our professional military education is about 18 months with a baked-in master's.
So it's pretty cool. As an officer, at his point in his career, 15 years, he's been through like 7 years of PME. And at 24 years, I probably have 6 months. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty comparable. But anyway,
I think it allows for me to do a lot of personality management for people like Chuck. So,
yeah, I actually just got a chance to listen to what was it, Bobby and Chuck Experience, episode 1. Good stuff, man. Honestly, I want to talk about Pineland Underground a little bit later, but I want to talk about SWCC. Right, we kind of hit professional military education a little bit here and there. Our show's trying to cover the entire enterprise, all across SOF, all across the different tribes. There's so many different intricacies. We could have weekly shows for years and years and not touch everything. But professional military education is something that's pretty important. You guys did a good job of kind of having a really authentic conversation about that. I'm curious, Chuck, as you all of us want to be on a team, right? You and I both got a lot of time on a team. Like, it's great. But now that you're in the position where you have the opportunity, and I've heard you talk about being able to go talk to the Captain's Career Course, talk to some of these other courses, and sort of start to be that mentor that's imparting things. I mean, you've had multiple, as you said, multiple combat deployments, multiple combat injuries, showing resilience coming back from those things. What's that mean to you, and how do you approach, being a mentor for all of these young 18, 37s, 38s, and alphas that are coming up?
So when it comes to professional military education as a whole, PME, it's not something that people are excited about, right? You're not like, oh man, I really want to go to the senior leader course. But if you're an E6 and you're about to promote to E7 in the Army, and I would assume it's the same for the other forces, at that point in your career, the Army's going to pay you more money, and they're not doing it because they think you're cool. They want you to take on more responsibility. They want you to understand more, and that comes with knowing how to play the game and understanding the rules a little bit better, right? So as an E6, you're expected to be really good at what you do. You're a doer. You can, blowing doors, using your Mark 19, whatever it is. But then as you're making that jump to E7, that's kind of the delta, at least in the Army, where now you're a really good chess piece. Now we're going to pay you more money, but we want you to take a step back and become the chess player, right? Mm-hmm. In order to be the chess player, that's where you need to start understanding the rules of the game. And now that we're with these 18-month training cycles and resource-constrained environments, you got to master the game a little bit better if you want to get what you want, resources, you want your commander to underwrite risk. So you take a step back and start learning all those things that aren't necessarily sexy or fun to learn, but they allow you to play the game better. Once you know those rules, you can get what you need, right? And that's like, okay, hey, we're going to teach you about national security strategy, or I need you to understand about fiscal authorities or unconventional warfare or the nitnoid details of training management and planning. And that's for everybody, Captain's Career Course, our courses. What is it that you need to know to play the game better? Like, what is it that you need to tell your commander that he's confident in your abilities, so he's going to underwrite that risk? Knowing doctrine. what are these things in the Army? We've got AR 350-1 that align our training, right? And I'm just going to put this out there. You guys can edit this out if you want. You know, the Sergeant Major of the Army and some others made some comments recently about, hey, why are you guys doing this online training? Like, you know, we don't do that. We haven't done that for years. It's in the back of the Army regulation. So if you don't want people to do it, take it out. And then when people aren't doing it because they want to, it's prescribed in the regulation. Take it out. People won't do it. We won't waste our time with it, right? But teaching people those rules, because once you know those regulations, you can, you know, at that point in time, once you know them, then you can maybe bend the rules a little bit, or at least get around things that, you know, maybe don't meet your end state. But at least you can brief them like, hey, sir, I'm not going to do these things. I want you to accept risk on these because these are kind of stupid. They don't really meet your end state. Okay, yeah, because time is finite, right?
And you can hold people accountable to them if they tell you no. It's like, well, actually, you know, your policy or the rules state right here.
Do what you wanted, sir. I didn't make these rules. You said right here in this command training guide, this is what you wanted. That's why I need $50,000, 74,000 rounds of ammo, and whatever, and go hang out at Key West for 3 weeks. Like, I think it's dumb to go hang out on boats for 3 weeks, but this is what you want, right? Just playing the game.
I'm with you, man. 100%. Nobody wants it, but if you have that foundation and framework, you know, we all talk about, you know, working outside the box, working in the gray, whatever. But if you don't understand the framework of like a starting point for that, you're behind the power curve of your peers who are willing to play the game and do some of the things that none of us want to do. You don't want to sit there and do risk assessments and TRACONs and everything else, but the guys that are willing to put in that work are the guys that also get to go have the fun and actually do it. Bobby, I think it's cool. You know, I didn't know that part of your backstory of coming in and actually being at First Group as a chemo. I've had a lot of awesome enlisted guys who were support enablers at Group that, you know, we saw, you know, amazing talent and value in those guys, and, you know, continue to just tell them, like, hey, man, you got to go to selection. And I've had friends that they're back as Green Berets now as enlisted dudes who are enablers. And it's one of the coolest things, right? Because you guys have a unique perspective of actually getting to see what Group's like. You know, like I joined as an 18 X-ray. Chuck was coming from the infantry. Like, we thought we knew what it was, and we're diving into it, but we don't really have any idea. You did. So can you tell me kind of now in your current position, how do you use that kind of background to help talk to upcoming officers and other people about what it's going to be like and how to sort of, on the same side, mentor them to be the best team leader or detachment commander they can be?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I'll hit on there is, you know, we're actually going to do a podcast focused on this because, you know, that soft principle that is, you know, soft requires non-soft support, right? Yeah. And whether that's you're going out the wire, guys on the miniguns, your drivers, your mechanics, your cooks, you name it, like that is lifelines. That's soft support. And I would say at almost every single, you know, combat engagement downrange, you know, an ODA had your enablers, your support entities, your your soft skill MOSs. Yeah. They're part of the PMT, they're part of the team, and they're completely dialed into what the team's doing. Absolutely. And they're going to be relied upon in combat and competition as well. So for me, it was, I always wanted to be the guy that was by name requested. Yep, I'm a chemo in second battalion, first group. I do USR and all these other things, additional duties, your analysis, and all these, all these other things for the battalion. Yeah. But when
movement officer, you get all the good stuff. Yeah.
Yep. But when guys gave me the opportunity to go to the range or do something, it was, hey, thanks for the invite. I learned a lot. Here's a case of beer. Let me come out again. You know, I want to be part of that, but learn from you guys. And then going back out as a detachment commander, you know, out in Okinawa, say you're going on a joint combined exchange training event in Thailand. Well, you're going to require your riggers, your mechanics, your cooks. We always try to find the best guys or guys and gals that were, you know, really dialed in, wanted to be there, that we could mentor and coach. And then, you know, obviously, hey, we want you to progress in your MOS and your skill set. We need you to be really good at it. We need you to be part of this team and be able to, you know, help us out. But also, if you're interested in you know, assessing and selecting down the line, you know, here's what it looks like. And it's just taking care of people. So we're going to actually do a podcast focused on that here in the future, because I think that's a really important aspect that we may not talk about or show appreciation towards. Yep. And on that mentorship side, you know, so I'm actually around all the new RSOF people who are in the language phase. I'm your language and culture director language and regional education director right now. So I get to do brown bag lunches, sit down with, and just engage with the brand new bushy-tailed SOF graduates. And what I try to do is just give them an understanding that, yep, when you get to a team, you've earned something pretty special. That tab on your shoulder, that fancy green hat you get to wear, or your civil affairs and SIAP MOS. You're expected to be a leader, but you still have a lot of learning to do. You're always being assessed. And so be humble about it. Really, be humble, be hungry, and be smart about it, and continue to push yourself, but ask questions, rely on your NCOs. You're ultimately probably the decision maker, but when you do that transition to get there to the team, you're going to be expected to take ownership of it. And then just surrounded with awesome people, you get to walk amongst these giants in down the team room halls, take it all in, soak it all in, and just enjoy the hell out of it.
No, it's great stuff, man. I'm curious, as 3 Green Berets, our regiment's going through some shifting, maneuvering. There's a lot of different things that are sort of in flux, right? As we kind of roll up the end of the global war on terrorism that all of us spent so much of our career, training for, going to, all of the above. As that shift happens, there's a lot of talk, both in our sort of circles and sort of from the outside of, how's the young force approaching this shift to GPC? i.e., for Chuck, for you, as you go down and talk to, our young Green Berets, our young PSYOP or CA guys, they've had a Chuck Ritter poster in their bedroom growing up. Like, I want to be that guy who's hammering the GWAT again and again and again. And now I finally have gotten through this. I'm a young dude on a team, and now it's all partner force, and now I'm not getting to do all the things that I thought I was going to do under a kill video and all these things that I watched. Like, what's your sentiment as you're hearing these conversations, and how are you approaching talking to these guys about still being able to do real world missions and be valuable to the nation, doing what we need to do?
Yeah, so I'm going to share with you what I call pirate theory, and I've got 2 versions of this. I've got the pirate theory, which I give to younger people, and then we've got the golf bag theory, which we give to like CEOs and whatever.
and Bobby Tuttle, because he likes golf.
Bobby Tuttle, yeah.
For country, I got you.
Yeah. Actually, he's brought me on a couple of those to give this speech.
Yeah.
But I think it comes back to defining what we do, right? Because people do see these posters and it's, you're doing all this Halo stuff and all this cool guy thing, whatever, right? But the reality is, as Green Berets, we're the dirty deeds done dirt cheap option for SOF. We're like the budget SOF, if you really think about it. I would equate, MARSOC, Raiders, and us as kind of having the same mission set.
Right.
And I'm going to lay this out in this visual of visualize as Green Berets, we're on this pirate ship, and it's not super well maintained. It's kind of dirty. And you've got a crew of about 100 indigenous force personnel who have a different culture than you. They probably don't have a concept of toilet paper and, whatever. They speak a different language, and you're sailing in there to your mission. It's not very sexy. And you're going to be in there for a longer period of time, maybe 6 months to a year. And as you're sailing to your objective, you look over to your left and there's a sleek, expensive Navy destroyer coming by you, right? And it's one of your SMUs, and they're tanning on the deck. They're flipping you off. And they're going to go in and they're going to do something surgical, and it's going to be very clean and very well performed. It's going to be very expensive. And then they're going to be coming back, right? And they're going to be flipping you off, tanning on the deck again as they pass you by on this nasty, non-sexy pirate ship moving in. As you're going, you look over to your right, and all of a sudden there's this big old battleship. And a lot of guys, younger dudes on the deck, tanning, flipping you off. It's Ranger Regiment, right? They're going to go in with this heavy fist, and they're going to smash something, because there's nobody in the world that can do those type of missions better than Ranger Regiment. They're going to bring that fist in. They're going to smash something. They're going to smash it well, and then they're going to come back out. Same thing, cannon on the deck. We're sailing in there, and we're going to go, and we're going to do our job. And this might not be the cleanest all the time, right? It's going to be done with a low American footprint for low cost. Right. It's going to have minimal guidance. It's going to be probably ambiguous, true mission command type environment. Yep. And it's going to be for a long duration, right? It's the dirty deeds done dirt cheap option, working through your partners and your indigenous forces to achieve your desired end state versus, a lot of the sexy stuff you see where, it's all CQB, which is part of it, right? But the reality is our job is to go in with little to no guidance, with little to no resources, and figure something out for a long duration, right? That's kind of our positioning statement, right? I think We overuse the word value statement sometimes, but for us in SOCOM, it's positioning statements. Because if you look in the SOCOM toolkit, we all have different jobs that are very specific. It's like if I open up my toolkit at the house, I could nail a nail in with the screwdriver if I wanted to, right?
You try.
But the hammer's probably more efficient. So if we're always dealing with these value propositions and I open it up, it's like the screwdriver's like, hey, use me. And this other thing saying, use me. It's like the reality is there's a tool in there that's best suited for that job. It's the positioning statement for that, right? So Navy SEALs are very good at what they're intended to do. They were never truly set up to work through a partnered force, right? So they struggle with that a lot of times because it's not what their bread and butter is. A Navy SEAL platoon can bring a lot of ass to the table and do pretty surgical things and very well. MARSOC, I would say, is more like us, dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Then your SMUs they're extremely good at what they do. They cost a lot of money for a reason. They have to use a lot of assets for a reason. Same thing with Ranger Regiment, right? But we've got all these different tools for very different things. And in the War on Terror, it overlapped. There was too much work to go around, so we had to put everybody at it. I get it. But when it comes to the younger force coming through, back to your initial questions, okay, let's wrap our head around what it is you're getting yourself into as a Green Beret and how it's not this super sexy thing that maybe you thought it was. But what we do is pretty cool because, I mean, some of the programs I've been able to build, my team built the Afghan National Army Special Forces program, the Ghazni Special Response Team, these things that endured for a very long time, right? Special Forces teams built the Commando Kandax in Afghanistan. You get to build these things from scratch with a little guidance. And I think that's awesome, is when you build something that endures and it's effective, and you do that all across the world, right? That's just an example, but that's kind of my pirate theory. What do you got, Bobby?
No, it's just to add to that though, too. So 20 years of counterterrorism, right? That was probably the main focus. But you look at, USASOC, Army Special Operations Command, for example, we've still been in about 70 other countries throughout Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. Just happened to be 3 of them. So we still had a presence throughout. I can recall going, from 1st Special Forces Group out to Afghanistan for a combat deployment during the global war on terror. And then you come back and you're doing a joint combined exchange training event, which is our medium to compete out in Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, you name the country. And so, before that, before that 20 years, I would say we often had that term. It was a very peacetime army. Well, we're not a peacetime army right now. We're a competition type army. That's the phase that we're in. I don't know if we'll ever go back to a peacetime army. But we learned a lot during those past 20 years of combat. The folks, really, that generational learning has outfitted the equipment, the structure, the training that we do here at the Special Warfare Center. We learned a ton. We proved ourselves a ton. And that's going to translate to whatever could be the future, if that ever does happen, if anything that does ever happen to break out. But we're able to continue to develop those relationships with every country we've worked with, and then tap into new ones too, to be a stronger, united front as partners. So that's what I got to kind of add there.
To get back kind of to your question about the GPC fight, and now they're calling it integrated deterrence. I think it's still called that. I'm sure next week it'll be called something different.
Or the SOCOM commander referred to it as the irregular deterrence.
Right. Whatever we're calling it, the move towards that, it's called SF convergence right now. We're testing out what does the future of an ODA need to look like. It's not set in stone. We're going to make changes. We've been dictated to downsize, right? We are going to lose personnel. So how does that look in the future, and how do we align our forces in a better way to achieve whatever it is we're trying to achieve, right? So we're doing this test for the next year, to where we're taking certain companies and certain groups, and what happens if we put civil affairs and all these enablers and we give you these cyber capabilities? We have a cyber enabled team in SF, and I really do hate it when people are like, oh, it's the triad, and you ask them to define it and they can't. But if you go down and talk to the teams that have tested through it, they have the answers for you. They can tell you exactly how the stuff works, and it's pretty impressive, to be honest with you. All right, so if you look at Ukraine as an example, those battles are completely different than anything we've ever seen before. The amount of drones and small unit elements doing their job, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
On the ground, they've really relied on. I mean, that's true mission command that their army is falling back on. Small elements operating, and it's LISCO in a different flavor than we've ever seen before. I think we need to apply some studies to that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Bobby, I love that you brought up, you read my mind because I was going to go to you as far as first group. I was in a conversation recently over at Joint Special Operations University, and we were talking about this whole shift and whatever, and I was like, honestly, it's kind of insulting to Special Forces to say like we're making some massive shift, because there's a lot of places in the world that we never left. Like, especially as a seventh grouper, I know talking to a lot of first group guys, like the second half of sort of my team time was going back down into Central and South America and making sure that we were maintaining those partnerships, especially in our hemisphere with the land bridge. Like, we didn't drop all that. We're not re-establishing relationships. We're continuing to nurture relationships that we've had for decades, right? And so, I think for some of the people outside of our regiment, it's oh man, we got to make this big shift and whatever else. And it's like, hey, if you've actually been around for a while, Green Berets have been doing Green Beret stuff for a long time. Yes, did we flex our muscles in one of our sort of mission sets a little bit more than before? Yeah, of course. We were going to, everybody was going to one AOR to make sure we were, keeping ourselves re-blued on some of our mission sets, but that doesn't mean that we were completely neglecting the whole rest of the globe.
That's why we were overworked there for a while, right? Because you come back from a combat mission, and 2 to 3 months later, you'd be on a J set or something else, and you go back on a combat
and
mission.
schools somewhere in there and everything else. Yeah, there was not a whole lot of head-on pillow time during a lot of that. But what's interesting to me is you talk to, I've mentioned this on our show before, but in the second part of, as I said, the second part of my career, we're going down Central South America, and other teams were still going to Afghanistan. So it was a lot of heartburn on our side because we were like, hey, they're getting to go do what we get to do. The difference is right now that's not, there's not this massive, huge overlay of kinetic operations going on. Like, as we shift into this, as a new guy coming into SF, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about, am I going to go to selection? Am I going to do whatever? Like, the competition is here, right? Like, we have the opportunity for you to go do real world operations in competition, as Bobby said. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get that chance to actually go put it on display, whether it's on a dirty pirate ship or whether it's anywhere. In a lot of other places in the Army and in the military period, you'll be doing a lot of training and not a lot of getting out and working with others to try to compete on a global scale. So I certainly think there's, And as tried as it is, we didn't know in early September, before September 11th, that it was suddenly going to shift back to counterterrorism for a long time either. And so I think a lot of people can get this woe is me attitude of like, oh, well, it's all over and I missed the war and whatever. It's like, I think you better keep your powder dry.
A lot of work out there.
Right.
There's a ton of work. There's always work. It's a great line of business to be in. But also, there's some FOMO, right? As things were wrapping up, 2019 and 2020.
Sure. We all have it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of FOMO, but things never stopped. You're talking about first group. I think the group prides itself on doing something like 67 or 73% of the J sets or Joint Combined Exchange Training, which is our presence out in theater, working with our partner forces. And that partner could be a border patrol, a SWAT team, a police force, a tier 1 unit, a village militia. That's where we in RSOF, we work with partners. But there's kind of a term going around that's the deploy for purpose. I don't think that's the right term, because every deployment, every time you send RSOF or soldiers out the door, they are deployed for a purpose. There's always a purpose to it.
It's kind of the same task organized for purpose. That's what task organization is.
You mean just not flippantly throwing things at the wall? Yeah. Some of the sentiment behind that deploy for purpose thing, I was in some of the meetings when that started becoming like a buzzword. I agreed with where it started with, right? And it was basically back to what we were just talking about prior to that, which was we were saying yes to everything all the time and being the Swiss Army knife that we are, because SF's never met a mission that we didn't want to do. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's because we assess and select for extremely resilient, adaptable people who have a ton of initiative and want to go put their skills to the test. Like, we will always raise our hands and say, Green Berets can do that. And it's true, they probably can. But as we got into that, volunteer for everything, it started to mean, all right, let's deploy for the right purpose, as opposed to just like, we'll always have a purpose when we deploy, but let's be a little bit more intentional about not burning the Ferrari down, going down a back road instead of like, all right, let's make sure that we use the tools to Chuck's, kind of banging the nail in with the screwdriver earlier. I know he's at Bravo, so he's probably done it before a couple times here and there, but
I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah. You also talk though, it's doing the right things versus doing things right. And I think that's probably exactly what you're talking about there, Matt. Exactly. We do a lot. Doesn't mean it's be good. Measures of performance, measures of effectiveness. Let's do those things right and actually get the desired effects, desired outcome that we're looking for.
But it goes back to, I'm sure positive you've had the same experience where you're deployed and your mission statement is conduct special operations, which is the ultimate cop out. You're like, okay, what do you want me to do? Like, I want to conduct special. And then you go to
be soft and do
policy
soft.
by CONOP. You're like, okay, well, I think this is what they want. You throw the CONOP up. Like, no, you're an idiot. Like, okay, well, what about this one? They're like, yeah, that's what I want. Okay, like, I was just repeat this. You throw a light went up. They're like, no, you're stupid.
Not again. Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm not going to tell you what I want. I'm going to yell at your ass when you don't do it. when you don't do something, or when you do something that I don't want, right?
Right. No, 100%. And I think, I'm glad that we're, as much as I say it's an insult to, kind of some of a regiment that's been doing it a long time, I am glad we're having these conversations. I am glad that we're being intentional about some of these things, and we're not just, continuing to only fight the last war, so to speak. Like there are a lot of really smart people in our regiment and across SOF who are putting a lot of analytical thought into this and a lot of intentional thought and design on how do we best do this going forward, because we want to always make sure that we provide whatever our nation needs us to be, right? So I am glad we're having the conversations, but it's a little bit funny sometimes depending on what lens it's coming from. So I want to talk about lenses a little bit, as we've got, one of my favorite things about SF and about SOF, it happens in the conventional military, but I think it's a little bit tighter sometimes in SOF, is the officer enlisted sort of mind meld to become a command team, whether that's at a team level, whether that's company as you move on up. I think it's fun that you guys have you two as, sort of having that even on the podcast, right? So, there's a lot of jokes on your show, which I love because it feels like I'm straight back in my team room clowning on my captain as he's, got 18 months before he moves his stuff out. But talk to me, Bobby, I'll go to you first. How has that sort of, matured? Obviously, you had a different lens coming from inside as a chemo. What's been your thoughts on how do we do this right? And are we doing it correctly? I mean, I'll put it this way. As an 18 Alpha, if you hadn't been in first group as a chemo, you potentially only do the same amount of time on a team as you did in the Q course. Like, are we doing it the right way? That's my question.
Yeah, great question. So, the way I kind of approach that is, at first, I kind of preach this to our SOF students here at the language course is, SOF is inherently an NCO driven and NCO ran organization, right? Truly the backbone. And you have to rely on that backbone. You have to exercise that backbone. You have to give it trust, direction, but you have to get to know it. And so the best thing possible is actually understanding that there's people who've been in almost every situation you can imagine that you as that new 18 Alpha or that leader of the organization is probably going to see. So I truly try to recommend that it's, you ask for advice, ask for counsel, and then, you're the ultimate decision maker heading in that right direction of, yep, I think based off of, my experiences here, we're going to take it this direction. Right. It's kind of funny because, as we kind of started the podcast, some of the earlier episodes, they're kind of bland and dry, right? Like I didn't have any great sense of purpose, or
very officerish.
It was very officer. Yeah, it's very officerish because that's what we the organization thought it needed.
Yeah.
But we in the military and special operations, you always have a command team.
Yeah.
That's the intricate, intimate dynamic of your senior enlisted leader and the commander, and there's mutual respect, trust, even friendship there. And so, for the podcast, for example, Chuck and I got together, and I needed some NCO supervision. Nothing's worse than getting a couple majors in a room and all of a sudden they're just churning on stuff. Like, come on, like, you kidding me?
Like, how can we press the boss?
That's a hell of a PowerPoint presentation, guys. You got graphics of helicopters flying on. It's like, okay, guys,
15 minutes of favorite font, go.
Yeah. So it's And really that translates to being in a team environment and developing trust, but it also has the different roles and responsibilities. That officer overall responsible for what that unit does and fails to do in the entirety of the mission. You're focused on the team, you're focused on the trajectory in the long term, and then really up and out in the advertising and advocacy to the command to get those missions. And then that non-commissioned officer, Chuck, for example, focused on the tactics, taking care of the guys, ensuring that everyone's good, sound, ready, and deployable. And then those things come together in a nice, perfect mix so you can really trust one another and get out the door to go do these great things on behalf of the nation.
Yeah, Chuck, going from the NCO side, I'll say that, nobody liked to clown on officers more than I did throughout my 13 years on a team. But one of the things I hated the most was when another enlisted guy wasn't putting forth the effort and earning it every day to actually deserve that officer's respect and all the things that Bobby talked about. As you come up through a team and you become a team sergeant, you are, most of these 18 alphas are coming in. They expect that they're going to be able to fully lean on you. And, sometimes our guys get into those positions, they take that for granted, and they don't earn it every day, or they don't put forth the type of the leadership they should to make sure that team's going the right way. I'm curious in your thoughts on, coming up through being a team sergeant, obviously, for multiple years, then being a sergeant major. What's your lens on sort of that officer enlisted dynamic now?
No, I think that's a good point, right? And for us, if you have a special forces tab, when you're in a special forces company, everybody has that tab.
Mm-hmm.
All this doesn't mean anything. The only thing this does is it gives you the privilege to show up to work every day and earn the right to wear it, right?
Yeah.
And because nobody cares what you did yesterday. Like you said, I've got this background of Valor Awards and Purple Hearts, whatever. Nobody cares, especially stepping in my position now. People only care about what am I bringing to the table right now, today, right? You have to earn that every day. And your reputation is what you did in the past, but what are you doing competence wise? And then to piggyback off of, what Major Tuttle was saying is when you put those two together, as you move up in rank, you've got the experience, but as an NCO, if you don't continually educate yourself, you're going to quickly become irrelevant, because what we need to bring is the experience plus the fact that I know what I'm talking about and I can talk to this person's level. Like, for example, here's a joint ethics regulation, right? I don't like reading this. You read through
Please don't read it on my show. Yeah.
Your libido is low for at least 2 weeks.
Just by looking at that.
Yeah.
2 weeks, you have no libido.
I just shriveled up looking at that when you brought it up under the camera. Yeah.
But guess what? It's knowing the rules of the game, right? So we just came out of a meeting with the CG, right? We go in there, and when you both know what you're talking about, and you can advise him on certain things, that when he's got to make a decision, because he's often the final decision maker, that's where you make your money right there. But let's go back to the podcast real quick. So I just want to tell you, so at the Non-Commissioned Officer Academy, it's a brigade level command with no officers, right? Our commander's a CSM. So I was sitting down there and I was just tired of everything making too much sense, being too smooth. There was no good ideas running around. I was like, man, this is just too easy. I was like, I've got to have some officer stuff in my life. So that's when I was like,
I need some complications.
Bobby, let me come on as your co-host, because I need some problems in my life.
Yeah, so we literally recorded an episode because I thought Chuck's his story had been ran in our Special Warfare magazine. Yeah, and I actually hadn't read it yet, but our commanding general had served with Sergeant Major Ritter, and was like, "Hey, you guys should check him out. He's got a good story, but he looks the part and he articulates it well, and he's a leader at our NCO Academy. As the deputy director. So we did a fun episode called Forged in Fire, and then about 3 days after that, he literally comes up and was like, "Hey, so you let me be on the podcast?" And I was like, kind of laughing. I was like, for real, like.
But I was like, the podcast kind of sucks.
Yeah, he's like, next time, put another chair in there is what I'm telling you.
Yeah, he totally hung on to it, and to the credit of any successes that we're having right now, it's because of I would say, and I articulate this when I go talk to civilian companies and industries, is you kind of have the CEO and the COO, and that really that officer and NCO dynamic. To kind of break down and how that translates. But when in harmony, when it works together and there's mutual trust and respect, and then again, you kind of have your lanes, but they come together to make good decisions. It makes for a really good team dynamic and setting. Personal experience, I was out in Okinawa, had the opportunity to be the support company commander out there after my team time, and my first sergeant Danny Nisthal. So we got to know each other well, became friends, worked well together. Fast forward 4 years, we get paired together as a company command team in a different battalion. In a different battalion at Joint Base Lewis McChord, but we didn't have to become friends again. We didn't have to feel each other out again.
Sure.
It was, we picked off right where we left off, and again, enjoyed the time together, hanging out. But like the decisions and the respect was already there, in the best interest of the company to make cool decisions on behalf of the company. So
no, I like it. One of the things you said, Chuck, that I love is one of the greatest things that we can provide from a senior enlisted side is wisdom. And I define that as experience fused with intelligence, fused with education, right? And so you can't just lean on any one of those, but if you've got that experience and you don't continue to, work your education and other things to be able to maintain that level of understanding of the mission letter or understanding of the guidance that's coming from above you, like you have to be the peer as far as your conversations with your senior, with your officer counterpart, but you bring in a different level of experience that can provide some of that wisdom. So yeah, I want to talk Pineland Underground. We joked a little bit, hear the story of how Chuck kicks the door in, puts an extra chair down, says, "Bobby, move over, I'm part of the show." But I'm curious, like now that you've started to get established, you're starting to do these interviews, you're having these conversations. One, what have you gotten from it so far? And two, what are you trying to get out of it? Where are you trying to go with it other than being the self-affirmed best podcast in the military because you got some great marketing going? Where are you trying to take this thing?
Hey, so I'm going to let Bobby take this, but we're going to do the standard like AFN thing where the officer gives the officer answer, and then me as the E9. I'm going to say the exact same thing, but somehow take twice as long.
Don't cut to a commercial. Don't cut to a commercial of a guy releasing a weather balloon like that one AFN commercial that we all saw like a million times.
Hey, but before like that's what we're trying to avoid. The way we produce this, it's not some kind of narrative. The CG underwrites a lot of risk with the way that we produce these things. And we just talked to him. He's like, "Hey, I'm comfortable with it. Keep doing what you're doing."
Yeah.
But we didn't want as a whole, like, "Look at me, I'm the officer talking down to you. CSM, what do you have?" And just a bunch of baloney, right? But anyway, I'll turn it over to Bobby so he can answer. In an officer way.
And if you listen in, I think it's a bridge between really that team room setting and the academic style podcast that you'll see out there that you have access to. But really, I mean, so we're here at the Special Warfare Center and School, the true schoolhouse, the Special Operations Center of Excellence for the U.S. Army.
Which is normally pejorative to our formation, right?
Truly.
So,
and so, really promoting a strategic, positive, influential message that not only informs, but educates, and then inspires our target audiences. We try to bring that yin and yang aspect of the officer and the NCO. There's things that we kind of get after together. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is show that one, the Special Warfare Center and School does a hell of a lot more than you think it does. And every RSOF person has a touch point to SWCC. Yeah. They've either come through here, in their original pipeline for special forces, civil affairs, and PSYOP. So that's where they were generated. They came through here and got their initial training. And we bring folks back here as instructors. I mean, you have to compete to come back here and actually get on the podium to instruct. And it's a privilege to get to do so and give back to the force and mold that generation. And then a lot of folks come back here as well, to continue to share those lessons learned across the force from 20 years in combat, or, we're all the 70 countries we've been out overseas.
Sure.
And what are we getting after? It's continue to tell the story, demonstrate the significance of our people, the work that's going on here, and really just show and inspire individuals who want to listen that this is something special that we have.
And be entertaining in the process, right? But it was a cool project for us because, first of all, here's what we got going against us. Nobody's listening to SWCC, right? Like, even when I was on team, I'm like, no, right? It's already bad, and something bad in your head. And then on top of that, you've got a major and an E9 on there. Like, you know what nobody's doing? They're not like, "Hey man, let's invite that major and that sergeant major to our birthday party this weekend." Right? No, it doesn't. Like, who's going to want to listen to that? So that's that was our problem statement: is how do we make this interesting and entertaining to where people are listening in and seeing if this sergeant major is really going to get this major fired, for one. And then just having, like, you've listened to our episodes, right? We try to make it to where they're interesting and informative, but also entertaining. Like, we've got officer and NCO points, right? If he starts with acronyms or, pontificating about JRTC like you did on one episode. Like he gets officer points, and then if you accrue 10 of them, you got to wear the emergency clown nose that we have. And if you get NCO points by making sense and explaining things in a more pragmatic way, right? But that's a way to keep it light, more of a team room setting, but also getting on that verge of, academia and having those important discussions that are informative as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to joke with Greg Smith when, before he retired and we were co-hosting, I'm like, hey, Chief, just remember, like, we're talking about somebody mowing the grass on Saturday morning. Like, nobody's been like, hey, I really want to listen to 2E9s talk about like policy. Like it's got to, and he would like, I got it, Matt, I got it, but it's got to be consumable, right? It's got to be fun. Like, we're in the same boat, obviously coming from SOCOM. Like I didn't know who the SOCOM commander was, for the first years and years I was on a team, right? I'll be God's honest about it. Like I got coined by General Brown. And I looked down and I was like, oh, it's got 4 stars on it. That's pretty cool. I had no idea, and I was like E6, I mean, it is what it is. But,
and then, as far as the self-proclaimed best official best podcast in the military.
You can't even say it, Bobby. You got to read your own.
See? Officer points. Trying to be cool. Messed it up.
No,
but it is one of our key tasks. Produce the best official podcast in the military because to us, we've listened to all these, man. You listen to some of the HRC ones.
Have you listened to the talent management one?
I can't say that I have, Bobby. I'm not going to deride anybody. I've got my PAO shaking his head behind. I'm not going to deride any other official military podcast. I'm happy to have you guys on, and I will be glad to. We're going to do an episode swap. I'm coming on Pineland Underground. I'm excited. I've got to apparently find some sort of better background so that I can look more official. But I'm excited to come on. How many episodes you guys done now? I know we're recording it. We'll release it later. But how many have y'all done together?
What, about 16, 15, 16?
17,
Yeah, it's awesome. I can tell you, now that we've done it for a little while, it's almost like your episodes are your kids. Like, everyone's your favorite. But if I'm listening right now and I'm going to listen to 1 or 2 Pineland Undergrounds, like, what are some of the badass episodes that you guys have had that, like, if I tune in, I'm hooked?
So the first ones I would start out with is we did a full spectrum special operations series. You talk about RSOF, Army Special Operations as an umbrella term, and you think Green Beret, Special Forces. So we did 3 complementary ones. So Special Forces, Civil Affairs, and PSYOP.
Yeah.
And really what it does, I think it deep dives the interesting true characters that each of those produce and are experienced overseas. And it really helps define and through storytelling, explain what each of those entities does. There's a lot of misperceptions. There's a little bit of tribalism out there.
Sure.
So actually, we try to break that down a bit and just show how they are different. They're different tool sets for use of SOC, and then how they also complement one another to get after the problem sets that they're put against.
Yeah, I'm going to get dragged in the comments because I've said PSYOPs several times, and I know it's PSYOP 37. There's no S. I got it, guys.
I've heard you say the S a lot.
I know, man. I'm sorry. I'm an old dog, man. It's okay. All right, Chuck, go. What's Pineland Underground? What episodes am I listening to? Bobby gave me a very official answer that supported the command. The general's going to give him a cookie later. Yeah. Well, what am I listening to, Chuck?
BRAC Force 1. It's one of the first ones.
I listened to that one.
Yeah, we did that one because we're like, all right, we need to change the narrative here and show that this isn't just some officer like, hey, how are you doing? Like asking weird ass questions. But BRAC Force 1, it starts off and we're just joking about grammar. People have actually had negative comments on that. We're just joking, right? But it's real. Like, you should use myself correctly. You can only do things to yourself. You don't say, hey, contact myself, right? Anyway, that's the first part of the show. But this guy on the show was on a special forces team, and they thought they had killed bin Laden, right? So they went into this area. They were there for days, crazy fighting.
Yeah.
The enemy was very professional, and the CH-47 finally landed at the end. They picked him up. They're like, we killed bin Laden. And so they were all celebrating at the fire base. But what happened is, they were the force that went in right, across the border from where the SEALs went in, and they were like the spies like us, decoys.
They were a shaping element.
So that was kind of like their, that would have been like almost like their QRF or something. But they went in there, and of course they didn't kill bin Laden. But the story's funny. He was a young 18 X-ray. It's just that's one of my favorite shows, I think.
Yeah, it's damn funny.
Yeah,
completely entertaining, and then also in line with the quality and talent of the people we have here. He's a Silver Star recipient, Purple Heart recipient, but also you'd never know that. You would never know those things.
And the episode's called Brack Force One.
Yeah.
The dangers of misusing myself. And I thought I killed Bin Laden, right?
Yeah. I like it. I also enjoyed Kyle Lamb. You had Sean Mullins on there. It's some great episodes, man. Phenomenal. Gents, as we wrap up here, I want to turn it over to you guys. Any last second, Chuck, anything last second you want to give our listeners? Bobby, anything last second you want to, talk to the boss about? Just anything last minute, kind of leaving thoughts.
I don't know. I'll let you go first, Bobby.
Yeah, so we've got 2 episodes coming out. So when this releases, they'll probably be released already. So 2 episodes. It's September. It's Suicide Awareness Prevention Month. Yep. Chuck and I weren't directed to do any of this. What we wanted to do is it's very much a real thing. It's a thing that I think has flowed through the veins of people throughout the ranks of the military. So we have 2 very special guests, Mike Fioca and Josh Thompson, and we talk about real stuff. It's not a public service announcement. It's talk about guys who have gone through some stuff, are alone on a lonely island, and there are ways that they became self-aware of what problems they had, surrounding themselves with great people, really just found success and were able to get out of that lonely island and dark place. So I would say check those out. And then for us, it's a pleasure to be able to do this. We're able to tell the stories and bring the folks on across our formations that are just badass, have incredible stories, and probably a little bit more humble in the fact that there's always somebody out there who's done more than we have. That's a perception, but for us, it's inspiring, and it's just amazing to be able to connect with those people and tell their stories.
Yeah, for me, I'd say just for all your listeners out there, especially if you're in the Army, use us to your advantage. We have our podcast email on every episode. You can Pineland Underground at gmail.com. But for somebody like me, I can't make E10. I just had my 30th surgery in the past 15 years. Yeah. I'm going to retire in a year and some change. But with these platforms that we have, these are also messages. We know the USASOC commander listens to our podcast and the First Special Forces Command, right? If you have topics that you think are important that need to be brought up, email us. If you disagree with the things that we say, you're not going to hurt our feelings, but let's have a conversation about it. Let's be an open channel to where we can also use these podcasts for dialogue, right? We can bring up things like, hey, okay, if the Army command thinks that online training is stupid, then take it out of the regulation, right? You control it. Things like that. Let's have those conversations, bring them up in a manner that's not, I can get fired. Bobby probably wants to hang on to his career for a little while, but let's do it, right? Email us.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate it, gents. As I kind of said earlier, I heard your show. Didn't know either of you, but obviously knew your backgrounds. And as I started listening to the show, what I want our listeners to get out of this, some information in the middle, a little bit of fun, but really to know, hey, these are 2 real dudes who they're not getting dictated to give me some talking points. It's a real, they're after the right things. And so an honor to have you guys on, and hopefully some of our listeners will hear this and jump over and subscribe to Pineland Underground as well. Bobby, I'll just mention, I love the suicide prevention thing, and that you mentioned it wasn't something that somebody made us do. We've got one coming up as well that unfortunately the scheduling didn't allow us to be able to do it in September. We were trying to do it. But we want to have real authentic conversations about things like that because they are important, man. Nobody wants to sit through another check the block, suicide prevention training any less than I do or Chuck does or Bobby does. But we all know that we have those real conversations in the team room, and it is important to invest in each other and take care of each other because none of us want to lose another brother or sister left or right of us. So I applaud you guys for doing it. I look forward to listening to it. And again, thank you both for joining us on SOFcast. And for all you listeners out there, thank you for listening to another episode of SOFcast. Hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. As I said, jump over, give Pineland Underground a follow. And if you're not following us for some reason, but you're listening, subscribe right now. Jump around and give this a 5-star review. And if you've got somebody that you think in your team or in your sphere that would get some value out of, listening to this conversation, that would get a kick out of it, send them a link right now. And make sure you're following USSOCOM, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't think we got anything else. I think I covered them all. But same kind of pitch that Chuck gave. If you've got something you want to listen to, you got somebody you want to hear from, you got a topic you want to hear about, hit us up, SOFcast at SOCOM.mil. We've used a lot of the listener feedback to shape the episodes that we have. So we really appreciate you listening to another episode of SOFcast.
Hey, I got one last thing for you.
What's up?
I just want your opinion. So this morning in a briefing with the CG, he asked about this specific episode, right? I said, hey, it's going to go one or two ways, sir. It's going to be awesome. We're going to knock it out of the park, or we're all getting fired. But either way, it's going to be impressive. Yeah. So I don't know.
I don't think you're getting fired. I'll say that. It's definitely awesome. I enjoyed it.
It can't be in the middle, though. Like, we don't.
No, it wasn't in the middle.
We never do things in the middle. We do things left.
I laughed. I cried. I was moved. I shied away when you brought up the actual copy of Doctrine, and now we're in.